Hey guys, I've been using my DJI Osmo Action 4 as my main vlog camera, including when I went to NBA All-Star weekend. I've got a few comparison clips between the Action 4 and the Pocket 3, so if you want to see kind of my first impressions of the Action 4 and some comparison clips, keep watching. Just a few little points before we get into the video. All my thoughts and everything I'm saying is from a very non-techie point of view. I am just a basic vlogging lifestyle content creator, so take that with a grain of salt. And not saying lifestyle or vlogging can't be super produced and super cinematic. I'm saying I'm basic, so that's that. And all my thoughts are going to be from a basic, newer creator and a very realistic type of kind of review, I guess. Also, I'm using the Action 4, which is not the newest model. I think the Action 5 Pro is the newest one. A lot of the things I say are more geared towards the Action camera kind of body and field of view and all of that. So even if you're thinking of the Action 5 Pro or you have it, I still think that this video will be relevant to you, but I am going off of my Action 4 just because there are a few changes and like upgrades to the Action 5 that I just didn't really feel like I needed to pay for. So that's why I'm going with the Action 4. But still, I think it's relevant if you also have the Action 5. All right, so I'm gonna share with you guys some clips of NBA All-Star Weekend, and then we'll come back and compare, share some other thoughts. All right, so here are the clips. This is a 2-pound sandwich from Uppercut. It's got pickles, some sauce, and a chicken breast in there.
We got a barbecue plate. Here's some brisket, some sides. They give us a roll too. This is from J&D's Barbecue in the city. Shout out. How's that sandwich? It's pretty bomb. See that face?
Should I dip? Or should I go raw first?
This is tender though. You feel that?
Yeah. It's just like, it can be breaking apart.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna make myself a sandwich. And then a piece. Damn, that's really soft. Curry. Giannis.
Bro, who is this? Who is this?
So those were kind of the clips. You guys can form your own opinions from what you guys saw and what you guys like, which one you prefer. But now I'm gonna kind of talk about how I feel about the clips. If you see me kind of looking up there, I have some notes right behind this camera. The first thing I noticed the most, and I think is the most, I don't wanna say jarring, but like very obvious difference, is that the Action 4 has a way wider field of view. And the field of view I'm using on the Action 4 is default. There might be a narrow, I don't know, I'm just on default. and I know there's a wide and an extra wide, but as I said, I'm just using default, and you can see so much more background and you get so much more in frame. And I think depending on what situation and what you're using this camera for, I definitely like the field of view much more. I'm using the Pocket 3 right now, so you can't see as much, but I like having kind of more things in frame. You get a sense of kind of my personality with all my plants and stuff, and getting to see more of my space, I just feel like is a little more cozy. So that was the very first thing I noticed. Second thing I noticed is that the Action 4's quality is not as good. And I'm not saying that this is bad by any means, but the Pocket 3 is just slightly crispier, slightly sharper, ever so slightly. And they're on the same setting. So they're both at 2.7K resolution and 30 frames per second. So that's not a factor. The Pocket 3 is just clearer and sharper. I would say though, it's not that much of a difference. I mean, if you're comparing side by side, it's noticeable and you can definitely tell. But if I'm only watching one, like if I'm watching a whole video that's using just the Action 4, I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is worse quality than the Pocket 3. Like I won't notice unless it's being compared to side by side. So that was the second thing I noticed. And then the third thing I noticed is that the auto white balance is a little bit different. There was a lot of situations where the Action 4 is more yellow or warmer than the Pocket 3. I honestly can't say which is more true to life. I think Pocket 3 might be slightly more correct. And if you're shooting in D-Log, that doesn't really matter because you'll be color correcting anyways. I'm using right now auto white balance. If you're using that, it's just something to note that this will be a little bit more yellow depending on the situation. It usually only happens with indoor lighting. I don't notice it too much with outdoor and natural lighting, but just something to note. That was, I think, the third thing I noticed. And then the fourth thing I noticed is that the Action 4's footage is slightly darker than the Pocket 3. They have the same settings, exactly the same. I guess this one just auto exposures to slightly darker. And I think that could be a pro or a con depending on the environment. There were some times where I felt like the Pocket 3 was overexposed. I think there were some clips that I took during NBA All-Star Weekend. The clouds, if you look at the clouds, there's a lot more detail in the Action 4 because it doesn't overexpose. And then it's like super, I don't want to say super blown out, but it was pretty blown out with the Pocket 3. But there were also some times where we're like maybe outdoors and it was like shadowy and the Action 4 was kind of way too dark and you don't see as much. And then the Pocket 3 is brighter and you get a little more picture, you get more detail because it's brighter. So I guess it truly just depends if you're gonna even be using kind of the auto settings or if you're gonna be kind of manually color grading. But I think that it's an easy fix if you just fix your settings properly. I don't think it's really a deal breaker either way. I think with the correct settings, you can definitely fix whether the Pocket 3 is overexposed or if the Action 4 is underexposed. So those were kind of my thoughts on just the clips that we were looking at for NBA All-Star Weekend. But as I said, I've been using this camera to vlog for the past week. The last video I just posted, which is my week of workouts video, that was fully filmed on the Action 4. So if you want to see kind of what a vlog looks like with it, you can go ahead and check that out. I used wide view for that one for some reason. So you'll see a lot more background stuff and environment things. But just a few other thoughts that I have from it being my main camera. One that I love so much is that this is just so much easier to throw in a bag. I'm sure if you are a fan of the Pocket 3 or you've heard about it, you know it's a gimbal. And that thing is fragile, like super fragile. And it's so hard for me to just put in a bag. I either have to use my case. I have to use the case that it came with, which even isn't that great because the lens still flips, so it could still get scratched. And if you want a better case than this one or protector, you have to get a separate one or like buy an off-brand one. And I just feel like the Pocket 3 is a little more fragile. Sometimes I'll have like water bottles in my bag that I want to put my Pocket 3 in, but I'm afraid because of condensation, it might get ruined because Pocket 3 is like 0% waterproof or water resistant. It's just not gonna be good if it got wet, where the Action 4 is an action camera. It's waterproof, I can throw it in, and I'm not worried about it at all. So that's the one thing that I've really loved so far about the Action 4 with using it currently. Second thing I love is I think this thing is a lot more discreet than the Pocket 3. I remember when the Pocket 3 came out and everyone was like, oh, it's so discreet, it's so small. Like if you're a shy vlogger, this is perfect. And I do agree that it is small and it is somewhat discreet. Sometimes I still feel super self-conscious because the Pocket 3 is such a different shape and it looks so like, I don't want to say different, but it's definitely unique in its form factor. And because of that, I sometimes feel like people are looking at me because they're like, oh, what's that really cool thing that she's holding? Or like, is she filming something? What is that? Is that a camera? I feel like because the Pocket 3 is slightly more unique, I do still feel self-conscious when I'm filming with it. But this guy is so small. Literally, I feel like I could hide it in my hand when I'm filming. I also feel like people are aware of like action cameras. They know a form factor of like an action camera, so they're not even gonna bat an eye. So I think like while the Pocket 3 is still discreet, and I'm not saying it's not, I think this is way more discreet in my opinion. So that's another thing I love about this. So that was the fourth thing I noticed. And then the fifth thing I noticed is that the Action 4 camera, everything's in focus at all times, whereas with the Pocket 3, you have like an actual focus and then your background can be blurry. So you do get a little bit more of a cinematic feel with the Pocket 3, but with the Action 4, because everything's in focus, you could literally just point at anything and you would get the shot as long as it's in frame. So those are kind of my initial thoughts comparing the Action 4 and Pocket 3 clips. And as a basic girly, I think either is fine. It just depends on if you like the wider field of view, if you like the smaller form factor, and this is much cheaper. I don't know the exact prices. I'll probably put them up here somewhere to compare, but this is just much cheaper. If you want something like your phone, but not your phone, because I know filming with your phone takes up a lot of storage and some people don't like that, but this one is slightly better and this one's slightly better at like throwing into your bag or not having to worry about it. I would recommend this one, Action 4, but the Pocket 3 is just as good. You have to be slightly more careful. You get slightly better quality for a higher price point. So it really just depends on whether you're willing to spend the money or not. But yeah, I truly think it just depends on what you're filming, what type of content you make. But again, take everything with a grain of salt. I'm just a normal girl who is not too techy, but still wanting to share my thoughts on the cameras that I have. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video or found it useful. See you guys in the next one. Bye.